Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all three past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code ONEFREEPP for a free single card today.
Dan Illman and Mike Beer taking a look back at the California Crown, going 1 1/8 at Santa Anita. It used to be known as the Awesome Again. It's still a major prep race for the Breeders' Cup Classic or the Dirt Mile. Let's break from the gate. And Bob Baffert had the two favorites in here. He had last year's Preakness winner, this year's Pegasus World Cup winner, National Treasure, a horse that we know likes to go to the early lead. And National Treasure, breaking from post position 3, is going to make the lead. And he also has Muth, the 3-year-old, returning off of a lengthy layoff, chasing outside. Keep an eye on Subsanador and Mike Smith, however, tucking in behind the leaders, the number 2.
Yeah, Subsanador just falls into a perfect trip here. But you know what, Dan? National Treasure falls into a perfect trip here, too, because he's absolutely loose on the lead in this race. And that's where he wants to be. Baffert had, 3 of the horses in this race, and 2 of them are going to be right there at the wire. But the favorite, Muth, he's not one of them.
Yeah, Muth, a very disappointing performance. I realize that, he's only run once since the spring due to various issues, but he ran fine in his prep, the shared belief. Getting back to National Treasure, we've talked about him a lot. It seems like he's at his best when he made the lead. In his most recent start prior to this, the Whitney, he did not make the lead. He might not have cared for a wet track. Considering these circumstances, a half in 47 seconds flat, you've got to be feeling really good right now if you're Flavien Prat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's just absolutely loose here with taking no real pressure, and he's going to be clear around the final turn as well, Dan. It's almost like the more you look at National Treasure's past performances, he just wants to go even faster than this. Like his races where he really has to go fast on the lead, he just keeps going. Here, he has all the best of it for the most part, and the horse that's going to sit right behind him the entire way and is going to come clear right now is going to eventually wear him down, and National Treasure is going to lose this race. And he's going to lose it without excuse, in my opinion.
You would think that National Treasure would have pulled away on the turn, but Mike Smith showed a lot of confidence with Subsanador. He could have gone up the rail. He decided to go outside when he knew Katona was going to drift. Here's Newgate, the other Baffert, the biggest price of the 3, going to make it a fight down to the wire. Subsanador got it done in between horses. It looks like Richard Mandel has gotten Subsanador good right now, but now we have to talk about National Treasure. This is kind of a disappointing loss, Mike, and I can't say it's the 1 1/8. He's certainly gone 1 1/8 and further in his career. Is there a chance that he's not as good as he was earlier this year? Or do you say, listen, we turn him back in a race like the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and that's where he makes hay?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what they do. It'll be interesting to see what Baffert does, because we already know that he can get 9 furlongs to be sure. But, the more you sort of pull apart his past performances, and when he won the Grade 1, the Pegasus World Cup earlier this year, going the 9 furlongs, really, really fast pace. He kept after it. He took over. He held off the closes. Really good performance, Dan. But it happened at Gulfstream Park. You always have to remind yourself that what happens at Gulfstream Park seems like it's never real and it doesn't really translate. His other 9 furlong races and longer races, they're not as good. And I know that he won the Preakness on a really slow pace. But, we'll see what they do. It is at least worth noting. They ran him in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last year, and he ran huge on a fast pace.
He gave Cody's Wish all he could handle and then some. Muth just didn't run well at all. He was on the outside. There was no excuses. He was simply flat and empty. And it'll be interesting to see what Baffert does with a horse like this. If he shows up in the Breeders' Cup, I'm not willing to discount him. I know this race is terrible, but if Baffert runs him there, he thinks there's still something in the tank.
That's probably true. It'll be interesting. I don't know what they're going to do with him now. He was so bad in this race that I don't really know what they could possibly do with him, unless and I didn't necessarily dig through this entire card, Dan. And Muth got that sort of 3-wide trip, unless you're going to tell me that the rail was the place to be on this day. I don't really know what to say. He was awful in here. I can't particularly say I've ever been a big fan of Muth. Listen, and I'm willing. I'll go down with this ship. I think he's a sprinter, and they're probably never going to sprint him again.
I won't be surprised if Newgate runs in the Classic, because 1 1/4 just seems like his cup of tea. He's done very well at that distance in the past, albeit against weaker horses, but this was his first start since the Dubai World Cup, and he made it relatively close at the wire. I've never really thought of Newgate as a Breeders' Cup Classic winner, but maybe if there is a year for him to do it, it's this one.
I agree. It's not. It certainly would be worth taking a shot with him. You know that he can get the distance. You only have to go back to March to the Big Cap, Dan. He wins that race and he beats Subsanador. in that race. So listen, you know that he can go with, most of the top horses, at least in California. He ran fine in here. He had every chance to win. He just couldn't get by, but he was off a layoff, first back from Dubai.
Senor Buscador was in exceptional form over the winter and into the spring. He was second in the Pegasus World Cup to National Treasure. He won the Saudi Cup. He ran okay in Dubai. They gave him a break. He sprinted in his comeback. It looked like a good prep. He didn't run well here at all.
Just never showed up in this race. That's not really him. I don't feel like you necessarily want to hold that race against him, this race against him too much, Dan, because he's been so good and so consistent prior to this race. And for whatever reason, in this California Crown, he never fired a shot at any point in the race.
Let's take a closer look at Santa Anita because Richard Mandela's just gotten this guy good. He began his career in Argentina, where he was a really good miler, a Group 1 winner there, was able to stretch his speed to 1.125 miles. And when John Sadler had him, ran him in the big cap earlier this year, and he ran a good second behind Newgate. He tried hard. Mandela ran him at Monmouth 2 starts back, the Illman. He gave him a class drop. He didn't face a strong field, but all of a sudden he exploded to run a 102 buyer, the same number he earned in the California Crown. I wonder if that little class relief picked his head up, gave him a confidence boost, and here's Santa Anita. I also do have some questions about him going 1.25 miles, and I always question blanket finishes on dirt. Were there really 3 superb efforts in this race?
Yeah, I feel the same way about it, Dan. I don't know. I don't really know how much credit to give him. And listen, you go back and you watch that Illman when they shipped him to Monmouth. He ran really well that day. He won that race really easily. And he was good in this race too, albeit with an absolutely perfect trip. But he got the job done, and he got it done over a couple of nice horses from the Baffert barn. I can't say that I'm dying to go to the Breeders' Cup and bet this horse, especially at 1.25 miles. But who are they supposed to be afraid of? You got to take your shot.
The older male division has been in somewhat of a disarray recently, and Santa Anita jumps to close to the top of the class with his win in the California Crown. He's now paired up 102 buyer tops. He's earned over $1 million, and he paid a good price in the California Crown. As we take a look at the mutuals, it was Santa Anita paying $14.20. Baffert runs 2-3. National Treasure, maybe with a dirt mile. It'd be interesting to see where Bob decides to go with him if he uses his speed at the shorter distance. And Newgate ran really well considering it was his first start since Dubai. We'll likely see Santa Anita in the Classic, a wide open race. Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com race of the days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.